One, two, three.
Hello, friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from our secret ice fortress and laboratory high in the Swiss Alps. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. Keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground as Sumo and Smokestack direct your attention to a higher dimension. Are you ready? Stand by.
Hear ye! Hear ye! Citizens of the realm, attend your ear! One of our own stands before us today, convicted of great sin. Let not our hearts be shaken in what must be done in pursuit of justice, nor shrink before our duty to give each according to his due. The good Honorable Judge Sumo presiding. Thank you, Constable. Listener Albert Einstein, you have just been found guilty by a jury of your peers in the court of law. Do you have anything to say for yourself? Your Honor, have mercy. Have mercy, please, Your Honor. I wasn't thinking. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know. I'm afraid my hands are tied, son. I'll stand for the meting out of justice. Listener Albert Einstein, following the verdict of the court after a fair and speedy trial, as is your right, you have been found guilty of Technobabble, one of the most heinous crimes recognized by the Crown. Therefore, it is with heavy heart that I inform you that the sentence of this court is that you be taken from here to the room of execution, where you will receive justice. May God have mercy on your soul. Chad Wolf, please take him away. No! No! Please! Please, I can do better! I can change! Please! I won't do it again! Please! Please! Oh, no! Please! 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 Against the wall. No! No, please! I have 5 children! My mother's got leukemia! My dad has dropsy! I don't know what I was doing! I didn't mean to Technobabble! I won't do it again! Please! I can't! I have to go! Please! Sumo was right about everything! The world is flat! Please! Please! I took no joy in that.
That was really hard.
I didn't want to do that.
That was really hard.
I had to do it. Had to be done. You know. It had to be done. Do you disagree?
Well, I mean, Technobabble is a serious
It's a serious crime. It may be the crime of our time.
Yeah.
It may be like the worst crime you can commit. You know, and it's still he who tolerates the least wins, and we have to win here. You know, so I couldn't help it. I'm sorry, everyone. We've lost a good man today.
Yeah.
He didn't mean to do it, but he did it. And
I mean, I think there's a lesson here about Twitter beefing. If you
it's not even.
You start beefs on Twitter, sometimes you go somewhere you can't take it back.
You can't, and it's not even. See, some people are going to say he got executed for disagreeing with me, but that's not true at all.
Well, I mean, I could understand why they would think that.
They would think that, but that's not what happened. What happened is that he engaged in Technobabble as an explanation for something, which is so. Technobabble is when look. Technobabble is when you don't know what you're talking about, or maybe even you do.
Yeah.
But to excuse something that doesn't make sense, you just resort to saying word salad that sounds sciencey.
Yeah.
So this happened. I was bringing up very, very good points about things that don't make sense in the world, right?
Right.
One of them being that sometimes if the world is a ball, I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying if it is, occasionally meteors should seem to go up.
Right.
Do people disagree? Yes, they do. A lot of people were trying to be like, well, look, you live on this, it's a very big ball.
Yeah.
And my point is, listeners, shooting stars always seem to be coming from the up down, right?
Right.
But if you look at the horizon and you live on a ball, there exist angles at which a rock could come in from space where you would perceive it as coming up from the horizon.
Yes.
No? Yes. Yes, of course.
In theory, yes, that should happen. Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to happen. Now, some people, including Smokestack and other listeners, sent me videos of meteor showers where some could be construed as that maybe. I wouldn't say they were convincing. But I also know that it is difficult to discern directionality from something very far away in the sky with a camera.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
But I'm just saying, in waking life, walking around, you never seem to see meteors going up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we were having a very fair discussion about this. Everyone was being very respectful, including Albert Einstein, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he made the point that you can't see that, he said, because if you're looking at the horizon, all the extra atmosphere gets in the way. And blocks the light. To which I said, the horizon is on a flat plane. Like if you're if you're up on a mountain, but if you're in a flat land, the horizon is only 3 miles away.
Right.
So that gives you 3 miles of extra atmosphere to work with. Now, the range in which you can supposedly see meteors is between 50 miles up and 75 miles up. So if there was anything less than 72 miles in the air, it should still be visible because you get that extra 3 miles that makes 75. Correct?
Right.
I think so. I think that makes sense. And he said, no, because sunsets have Rayleigh scattering. And that's why he had to be shot in the head. You see? Because he said sunsets have Rayleigh scattering. Now, he may know what Rayleigh scattering is. I think he probably do.
Mm-hmm.
Or he may have just Googled my question and that was the thing that came up and he repeated it verbatim, which is what most people do. Is they just say the sciencey sounding words.
Yeah.
But no one in the conversation, besides me and maybe him, knew what Rayleigh scattering was. And it also doesn't matter. It's just all you could say is that the light is diffuse by the extra. That's all that means, is diffused by the excess atmosphere. It scatters around and you get a nice glow. And he said the sunset, when it's setting, see, that's why it changes hue, because of the extra atmosphere it's going through. And that is why it's happening, or the angles of incidence or whatever. That's all you have to say. You don't have to be like Rayleigh scattering. That's a way of diffusing responsibility for explaining what you're talking about.
So this was a very grievous technical violation of public debate.
It's a technical violation of, I think it's a violation against the Ten Commandments, maybe.
Geneva Convention.
The Geneva Convention, it's against the Nuremberg Code.
Yeah.
It's against all of them. And you see this come up over and over again in public debate where people start talking about things and then they just throw out these technobabble words. Like the COVID stuff recently, suddenly everyone knew what an R value was.
Yeah.
It's an R value of 7.
Yeah.
So it's T value, S is, you don't know about the S value. And and you just, it's like, you don't need to, anytime someone resorts to you, if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you don't know what you're talking about.
I mean, I think there's some wisdom in that statement.
Yeah. I think the actual Albert Einstein said that. He said, if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you don't know what you're talking about. You can explain almost everything in terms of plain English that is easy to follow, and you don't need to be like resorting to like another thing that like because I was gonna hit him after this one with several different flat Earth questions to see if he could, just to frustrate him.
Okay,
but one of them I decided not to because I didn't want to get off in the weeds. Was the question of like, okay, so the sun is really far away, right? So all the light coming in should be parallel. Correct? Right. Okay. But then why, when you see sunbeams, are they all diverging in a starburst pattern from the sun, seeming to go at angles from you? And there are answers for that. Some are okay. Some are probably correct, but maybe not. But people will be like, if you ask that question on the internet or to people, like I did to number 15, who's also sometimes is guilty of technobabble, but not as egregiously. Okay. So he has not yet been executed. But it could happen anytime in the future. It could happen, but he is the president, the CEO of Earth, so it's harder to. He's a bit above the law. It's got a security team and stuff. Yeah. And he said his answer was, well, the clouds, and this is what other people say. The clouds, they act like lenses. Now, first you go, huh? Clouds don't really act like lenses, but whatever. Mm-hmm. And they will, the light rays are actually scattering off the clouds, making these beams, right? Or coming through. It's not, but then if that was true, as number 15 quickly corrected himself, the light rays would seem to move around when the clouds moved, which they don't. Right. Yeah. Right. So, but people will get on there and they'll say that, and then they use the word, they say it's diffraction. When they go through a lens, it's wave diffraction, and none of the people saying those words could really tell you what diffraction is. Barely could tell you what a wave is, beyond what it is on the ocean. Like, what do you mean a light wave? What are you talking about? What's going on here? And that is the technobabble hides so much illogic and so much nonsense that it's unforgivable. We have to destroy it at every possible level, right? It's just it's so bad all over the place. Like, so, for example, after this one, we then got into I continued to attack, right? To see if he could redeem himself, and he could not. He could not. I gave him opportunity. Yeah. But he could not redeem himself. I made the very good point, that here's how you know that here's what I think counts as a proof, like a mathematical proof that the moon landing was fake. Okay. All right. The moon on a full moon night gives about 0.1 lumen of light. It's a measurement of light. It's how bright it is. You can read by it. Yeah. If you have a book on a full moon night, clear sky, you can read the words. Okay. But it's 250,000 miles away. Yeah. Now imagine how bright a flashlight would have to be on its surface for you to be able to read a book by it 250,000 miles away. It would be insane. Take a normal flashlight and you read by it and then move it back like 3 feet. Now it's hard to read by. Move it back across the room. It's impossible. Then do it. Now imagine 250,000 miles away. Right? And you can actually calculate that with the inverse square law. I'm not using Technobabble here because I'm going to explain it.
Okay.
I know it. All right. A sphere, right, has a surface area.
Yeah.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
And it's related to the radius squared because it's a circle.
Okay.
And as you move away in a spherical manner from a point, the area increases by r squared, basically related to r squared.
Okay.
So the amount of light coming off of a thing separates out. It what would you say? It thins out in a non-Technobabble way. It thins out in relation to the radius of the distance squared from the point.
So
what that means is that if you do like a back of the napkin calculation, if it's 0.1, not including the atmosphere, if it's 0.1 lumens here, it's 6.3 billion lumens on the surface of the moon. Now, a flashbang gives off 12 million lumens. So we're in the realm of 1,000 times brighter, and yet they shot a movie.
So does your lumen measurement, is that the combined output of the entire sun or the entire moon at the same time?
That's whatever's hitting the detector, like that's what's hitting your eyeball.
Right.
So that has to mean, like, if the flashlight is bright enough to read by here, that has to mean that at its surface it is 6.3 billion lumen bright. So then you're going to shoot a movie in a thing 1,000 times brighter than a flashbang constantly forever. It's not possible. It doesn't work. And no one has ever been able to answer. I have asked, you can ask physicists, you can ask astronomers. They all fall. And this is why I don't trust basically any science. Because this is a very simple question.
Yeah.
That should have come up before, that no quote unquote smart wise man can actually give you an answer for. They just can't do it. They say things like, oh, well, see, that's not actually true because the moon isn't that reflective. And you say, but the whole thing is that it is reflecting enough to let me read a book from 250,000 miles. It's pretty reflective.
It's a lot of light, yeah.
They're like, no, it isn't reflective. Well, then I couldn't see. What are you talking about? And they go, blah, 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 Raleigh scattering. See? And it doesn't work. It just doesn't. There's no answer to this problem. And I found similar things in every realm of science where there are small things. It's like, yeah, but this is a fundamental miscongruency here. Something is not right. And it's never, ever reconciled. Like we mentioned before, I'm not claiming to know how viruses do work or not, but I do know no one has ever actually seen the way that they're said to replicate actually happen.
Yeah.
No one has ever watched it. That's all just a story. And increasingly, all of the space stuff seems like a story. People are like, well, but they must know what they're talking about because quasars. It's like, what? Quasars are blips on a computer.
Yeah.
Nobody sees a quasar. They have these instruments and they point them at the sky and they get in blips of data. And then they say, maybe then they come up with a story to explain the blip of data. One of them being like a quasar or a black hole or whatever. And there may be black holes, but all you ever actually get is like little blips on a computer screen.
Yeah.
That could mean any sorts of things.
Well, let's say you've had there's an example, there's a good illustration of this idea. Let's say you've never seen a car before. You're an engineer in a world that cars don't exist. And so somebody gives you a car and you're working on it, or you're looking at it, examining it. How does it work? And you notice that at the relationship between the revolutions per minute of the engine and the revolutions per minute of the wheels are different. Their ratio between the speeds are different based on the position of the gearbox. Okay, so it's stick shift car. So first gear, there's a smaller multiplier of engine to wheel speed than in fifth gear. And so you try to figure out how this works without cracking the car open. And you do a bunch of math and you come up with differential equations and you design mechanical linkages on paper, and you design a system on paper that is able to predict at the wheel speed based on a combination of the engine speed and the transmission position. Okay? You do all this and it works, and it predicts at every point accurately. Okay? Which our models don't do. Our astronaut models don't do. Physics models don't do that. They all have holes in them. But let's just say you came up with one that predicted everything perfectly. That doesn't mean it's actually describing what's happening in the gearbox.
Beautiful analogy. You can come up with 1,000 different... You can probably come up with infinitely different mechanisms to produce the same ratios.
Right. You have a model that accurately predicts the future to some degree under certain conditions. So let's say your more realistic example is that you came up with a couple different models, and one model works well for like gears 1 and 2, but a different model works well for gears 3, 4, and 5, and another one works better for reverse, but they're not the same model. Like they don't work together on paper. And that's the picture of creation that science has for us, which is useful. Like, which took a lot of intelligence and work and ingenuity to come up with these models that can predict things. But it doesn't mean that we know how everything works in the manner that you would understand a transmission of a car by taking it apart and looking at all the gears.
Right.
We don't have that level of knowledge. When you point
out, your models don't work here, they go, Rayleigh scattering diffusion fraction, blah, blah, blah.
Right, and I think
value.
That's what you're a lot of the arguments that you bring up and that the show brings up are the model doesn't work here.
The model doesn't work here, and therefore, the people get so because look, here's the thing: Albert Einstein correctly, not the real one, the listener.
Yes,
Albert Einstein, the one that is now dead. Rest his soul.
Yeah.
He brought up, he did bring this to its logical conclusion. He said, I don't know how this works, but the sunlight shines mostly the same minus the atmospheric effects on Earth as it does on the moon. Therefore, since we can see on Earth, we must be able to see on the moon. And to which I said, right, now you're not going to want to follow that line of thinking very much, because that's going to destroy the entire cosmos for you. Because that can't look again. If it shines as bright as it does on you, both can't be true, right? If it is as bright on the moon as it is on Earth here, right? And here we see then the reflected light cannot be orders of magnitude greater than what is seen on the surface.
Yeah.
It can't happen. It's impossible, which means the only conclusion you can come here with is that, either the moon is not as far away as they said, or it makes its own light. There's no other way to do it. Because look, you can't be reflecting enough light to give me the light to read a book by from 250,000 miles away, and also basically as bright on the surface as it is here. And right. Albert Einstein tried to follow that logic. And he said, maybe it's because you get close, and as you get close, there's less surface area reflecting light, so you don't get as much light. And I said, oh yeah, just like the sun. As you get closer to it, it gets really, really hot, but then when you get right on the surface, it's 70 degrees, and you don't need sunglasses. It's great because if on the surface of a thing, it gets suddenly dimmer, all of a sudden.
We could actually build a physical model and test this. I mean, it's not. We just need a giant, frosted plastic globe with a light in the middle of it and a camera on a tripod with a, and measure
you don't
the
even
lumens.
just take a reflective surface. Take a shiny piece of metal in the sunshine that's shining and it's bright, and then walk up to it and put your eyeball like right next to it, and you're like, oh, it's brighter, it's brighter, it's brighter. Ah! Oh, wait, look, an inch away from it, it's fine. Wow. It's amazing. Where did the light go? It's like, it's hotter, it's hot, it's hot, it's hot. Oh, it's right on the surface. It's not hot, though. It's amazing. Those things can't be true. That's not how, so either, and the problem is people get upset because here's what happens. There's so much cognitive dissonance and emotions that flow because they're like, oh, Sumo is a guy that I somewhat listen to sometimes. And he is talking about flat earth. That means he's stupid. And that means I'm stupid for ever listening to him. And I don't want to feel stupid. Therefore, I have to go into cognitive dissonance about what's happening. Or what he's saying is true. And everything has been a lie my whole life. And I have to go into cognitive dissonance again. And so this is why people get so emotional about it, because my math about the moon, my moon math makes sense, and you all know it, and it's very uncomfortable for a lot of people. Because how does it work? No one knows. Neil deGrasse Tyson can't tell you how that could be possible. No one can tell you how that could be possible, because it can't be possible. Because the moon... Go ahead.
When you propose the luminance of the moon question to, I know physicists and like NASA people and whatever. When you propose this to them, what's their reaction like?
They go, that's a good point. I don't know. I have to think about that. And then they just don't. Because,
right.
See, they believe they have as a data point something that is a lie.
Mm-hmm.
Because they believe that people did go to the moon, but they didn't. And so they say, well, it must work out somehow. Because we have the data point that it did, even though, right, it doesn't make any, even though it doesn't make any sense. And people do all these crazy technobabble-y things. Like now the big thing is the moon is actually less reflective than Earth. It is actually, they say they're like, oh, it's not very reflective at all. It's like as reflective as like asphalt, maybe. The lunar regolith. See, that's another technobabble. They don't say moon rocks. Like the lunar regolith is less reflective, and so it's not very shiny. But you still go back to, but it shines enough to read by from 250,000 miles. Explain. And they go, quasars, and that's all that ever happens.
Right.
See, and you find this across all domains of science. To the point where I almost just throw it all out. Like when they do like carbon dating stuff. And maybe the Earth is very old. I don't know. But they're just like, oh, well, see, we have the carbon. And you say, well, how do you know what the carbon signature was 1 billion years ago since you weren't there to measure it? And they go, drive Richard Dawkins!
Right.
Like that.
That's
all they say.
They're like, somebody made an assumption.
Right.
And then everything references that assumption in carbon dating.
Right. It's just someone decided that that's what it should be, and they built an edifice around it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really, like, all the dating of stuff that people do is built on nonsense. You cannot, even if it were true, like, even if it were based on something, even if we had a person from 1 billion years ago that measured the carbon and said, here's what it was, you would have one data point, and now you're drawing a huge graph and assuming like a linear, you're assuming some sort of path between there to now, and you'd have no idea what it could be.
And that's the thing. It's if you make a fundamental assumption of your like historical reference value for carbon signatures or whatever, you can make a model. You can predict if somebody tells you, oh, this thing is this old and we know it. You can predict what the outcome of the test is going to be. But what you're inferring from the information as far as the age of things is based on assumptions, unprovable assumptions.
Yeah, unprovable, and like your car model is great. Like your model may fit some things, but that doesn't mean that that's what's actually happening under the hood.
Yeah.
And that's a fundamental problem that is you can't get by without. That's why you have to have actual experiment in science. You have to actually take things apart. And if you can't, you have to leave a question mark on the thing. Right? But people have stopped doing that because they got too big for their britches. And now they want to say that science is the same as like doing it on masars and quasars, which are things you cannot by definition take apart and look at and try to figure out how they work.
Right.
You just,
well, these guys tried to tell us what COVID was going to do in 2019, and they came out and said 11 bazillion people were going to die in 2020, and it didn't happen. Like
right,
their model was so staggeringly wrong. And all the public policy decisions were made on that model. And have they suffered for how retarded they were? No. Has anybody called into has anybody with authority called them into question? Justice
was done by killing Albert Einstein. He suffered for them.
He suffered. Yeah. It's like a symbolic justice for all of them.
Before we killed him, you couldn't hear this, but I ritualistically placed the sins of I placed the sins of the Cuomos on his head.
The Cuomos,
and then
British modelers.
Yeah, and then we shot him. Yeah, and that cleared. Andrew Cuomo is now ritualistically clean because of Albert Einstein. But yeah, and so like all of this stuff, it just doesn't work, and they just fool you. It's these incantations. It is black magic. It's like the kinase reacts with the adenosine and the proton shell and the bone repair, and it's just a guy over a smoky cauldron saying words, convincing you he knows what he's doing, but he doesn't. And I've done some like science, and I sort of know what I'm talking about. By some definitions, I'm a trained expert in like nuclear physics.
Yeah.
By some definitions, and I don't believe in nuclear bombs. So there you go. And you know what? I'm not the only nuclear physics trained person that doesn't believe in nuclear bombs.
And just audience, he's being a little bit modest about his qualifications right now. Just throwing that out.
But listen, I'm just saying, there are problems in science that are big, and people get upset when you point them out, because that means that things do not work. Like the moon thing is a big issue, because that means the moon is the only conclusions you can come from that is that the moon is either not as far away as claimed or produces its own light.
And it's
how do you solve the problem otherwise? There may be another solution. I can't come up with one.
These problems, these epistemological problems, multiply over generations of scientists. So if you have one generation that writes the models, right, and then and are very excited about these models that make these accurate predictions, the next generation that they taught
accepts that as gospel fact.
Accepts the model as truth, as like solid, categoric knowledge of how the universe works. And then the generation after that will never, I mean, for every generation that it goes unquestioned, knowledge of the holes in the model drift off from the debate, from the body of knowledge in academia, to where the questions are never even raised anymore or even acknowledged. And so you end up with a bunch of people that have huge holes or bad assumptions in their mental model of the universe, and that prohibits them from doing cool things now.
Yeah, that's why no one makes anything new.
It's like your example of structural engineers that think, jet fuel can melt a building. or whatever.
Yeah, and now they engineer it around something that doesn't happen.
Right. It's that problem of these inheriting a bunch of bad assumptions about the nature of the models that you've been taught.
Yeah, and when the scientific revolution got going, they had a clockwork model of the universe where everything was just sort of wound up by a divine watchmaker and set go. And that still is the ghost that's haunting all of their thinking, is that it's all just billiard ball particles bumping into each other forever. And this and that's all that there is. That's all that there can be.
Right.
That's why they have this like diminished view, like consciousness is just, people actually get up there and say consciousness doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's a result of that thinking that happened in.
It's like, what are you, dude? Are you not? It's like, I'm pretty sure my consciousness exists. You may be a zombie,
right?
I don't know. Like, people deny their fundamental experience of existence, which is their own consciousness, because it doesn't fit their model.
Well, this is how you get the retarded propositions of transhumanism, that your consciousness is going to be uploaded, and there's no difference, because when you get into the nitty gritty, really, they're just creating an algorithm that says the same things that you say and thinks the same things that you say. So it's they think that there's no difference between uploading your consciousness and making a little electronic golem that does things reasonably what you would have done.
Would answer the same question,
and that's living forever. I mean, I know that one of the goals of magic is to live forever, but this is a downgrade from the days of Merlin, guys.
It is a super downgrade, and it's all these holes are just papered over by Technobabble.
Yeah,
that's the spackling.
Yeah,
which papers over all of the holes in the nonsense edifice that we have.
But the thing is like these scientists that propagate the ideas that one day you're going to upload your consciousness and live forever in the metaverse or whatever. They'll stand up on the balcony of the Ivory Tower and pronounce that as the future awaiting you, and then lots of people believe it. Yeah, and think about what that does if humankind can live forever because of a scientist. What does that do to your religious and metaphysical beliefs at like a base level?
Oh yeah,
kind of the same thing. It's like the next evolution was a psyop, and then that's one of the next ones, and it's very corrosive to the soul of a human being to just believe those things, and it's wicked that a scientist would get up there and make such a pronouncement. To the detriment of all mankind.
Yes,
because most of them know better. I think, especially on the transhuman.
I don't know if they know better now. I think they are so lost in this. I think they are so caught up in their own magic spell.
Maybe.
I think a lot of them are also hooked on it. But this is why the church is in shambles, because a lot of the leadership of every church believes in this nonsense stuff, and but listen, you guys are not ready for this. But you cannot reverse demographic decline on a ball.
What?
It won't happen. You can't reverse demographic decline and declining birth rates, which everyone is concerned about if you live on a globe.
Why?
It won't happen. Because the atheist leftist logic is reasonable. That's the reasonable conclusion if you live on a ball.
I'm not seeing the connection.
I know. Look, what I'm saying is the worldview where you can upload your consciousness to a computer.
Oh, I get you. Okay. I get you.
Is the logical conclusion of living on a globe floating through space doing nothing for no reason.
Right.
You can't do that's why your religion doesn't make any sense now.
You can't give people a reason to multiply. People don't have a reason. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, your religion doesn't make any sense now because you threw off all the cosmology, all of it. But then there's reasons, but they're very scary. You're like, listen, how about that moon though? Seems pretty bright here. How bright would it have to be there? And then that one thing makes you go, oh wait a minute, oh no, and then and then living on a different cosmos is very scary. Now, I'm not making a claim here that the Earth is necessarily flat. I'm agnostic to the shape of the Earth. I'm just saying that there's things that don't make sense about it. You should be able to feel it spin a little bit sometime. I mean, it's supposedly rocketing through the universe at like a significant fraction of the speed of light and wobbling all around, but everything feels very, very still.
Right. Well, I think the important point here is that the confidence that most people have in physics and models of the universe that have glaring problems in them is a dangerous thing that has effects beyond just what we think about where the moon is or what it is. And I mean, there are effects right straight down to human birth rates and belief in God. And I mean, there's always like second and third order and further consequences to an errant belief or to believing a lie. If you believe you're floating through an infinite nothingness for no reason at random because of a giant accident explosion, then of course you should do sodomy. Like really, like there's no reason. Yeah. To not like it all their worldview is consistent with their cosmology. Yeah. And all of you religious people, you Christians and whatnot, yours is not, and that's why you keep losing. Right? And I'm not telling you what you have to believe. I'm just saying that you have thrown out all of the cosmology that your thing was built on, and therefore, how does it still stand? How does it still stand? It doesn't. But also, look, the moon. Look. It should be pretty dang bright on there if that's what it is. They said that they walked on it. Just think about that for a minute. And there's just the idea that your religion has no connection to your physics is the same sort of idea that your faith has no connection to the politics or the mode of government. Yeah, and it's like there's a secular science is as much a dangerous myth as secular politics or the secular state. There's no such thing as a secular state. Right. All right. And as a Christian, I will say that a state is either acknowledging the authority of Christ or it is worshiping Satan. Right. Yeah, that's true. Pick one. Do you know what? I forgot to turn on my local recording. You did? Well, we've had pretty good signal this morning, so just go ahead and pop it on and I'll see. All I wanted to do was play dulcimer. Yeah, but Chad Wolf. I'm thankful for Chad Wolf for pulling the trigger. He is our security expert. Yeah, and he didn't want to do that either. He's a man who knows his duty and can do it. Yeah. Yeah, he knows his duty, and I'm thankful for him for doing it. And I didn't, but it's made me. I didn't want to sentence Albert Einstein to death. I really didn't, but I had to. Have you ever seen that guy? I forget his name. There was like an executioner whose robes are still like in the Vatican Museum or something. Yeah. He killed the papal executioner. I think his last execution was in the 1800s. I mean, he was. Yeah, and he used to have his axe there. Yeah. He referred to his people he had to execute as his patients, which is very. Apparently, he wasn't allowed to leave his county for some reason. This was part of the deal of being the executioner. Weird. Except to cross the bridge into the city of Rome to perform an execution. So he would put on his hood, his red scarlet hood, and get his axe and begin his march across the bridge, and everyone would see him and go, "Oh man, someone's getting it today." And that's how I'm sure Chad Wolf felt. Yeah. When he got his we should send him a robe. Yeah, I didn't pay attention to what gun he used. I'm sure he has a specific gun that he uses for executions that he probably has named. It's probably Betsy. I think it's probably Mercy, maybe. Gwendolyn. Yeah. Maybe. I think he would name it something sort of cryptically dark. Okay, yeah. Like, I don't know. What would you... Painkiller, maybe? Mercy.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what you did, but all I wanted to do in life was just like play but I've been called into this a destroying science role.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have been the dulcimer. It's dulcimer time because it's Christmas time. I grew up in probably the world's mecca of dulcimer playing.
No joke.
Yeah, no, really. For like a long time, the little club that ran out of the city, the small town I was in, had the #1 website of dulcimer in the world. And like I was introduced to it. I used to take a karate class in the rec center of like a town of like 5,000 people.
Yeah.
And then after, it was bigger than that, but not much. But then after that, like 1 week a month, when I was like 11, there would be like 50 old women who would march into the rec center with their dulcimers, and they'd all just jam.
Awesome.
And they would show me stuff, you know. It's mostly an instrument played by old ladies.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't say it's their #1 instrument. It's their #2, because their #1 is obviously the church piano.
Obviously, yeah.
And playing there. But their #2, and they just get in there and they play their hymns, and they all, you know, and then they talk about needlepoint or whatever they do. But they all, and that's all I wanted to do. But then people were like Raleigh scattering and diffraction, gradients, and p-values.
You had to raise the black flag, man.
I did, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to kill Albert Einstein. Thankfully, I didn't have to. But is the person that sentences justice, is he their killer, or is the person that pulls the trigger? It's a philosophical question.
I think the institution is the killer.
That's right. I'm not guilty at all. It's the institution.
Yeah.
It's not me.
Right.
I'm just I'm the servant of the institution. And doing a duty.
Yeah.
But today we have an interview. You haven't listened to this interview, have you?
No, I have not.
I think you're going to love this interview.
All right.
I think it's an interview. This is an interview with a lady.
It better be good, because
Chelsea.
we killed one of my good friends today, and I'm just feeling sad.
I think this
about
makes
it.
up for it.
I hope this will cheer me up.
I think it makes up for it.
Okay.
We can get you new friends. You know,
I don't want new friends.
But this is an interview with a lady named Chelsea, who did not want her last name revealed for various reasons. Not because she was so worried about our podcast, but because she, in her own words, didn't know who we were.
Okay.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
Which is fair. But she even though she didn't know who I was, she talked with me for over an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I was interested in it because she is a mother, a stay-at-home mom of 6 children.
Uh-huh.
Who their entire lives, they have not made more than $50,000 in a year, and their family has traveled the entire globe.
Wow.
On that, and they live and they own their own house outright. And I was like, how did you do all these things? Like, because most people, I wanted to help people realize you don't have to make like $200,000 to have one baby.
Mm-hmm.
Which is how a lot of people feel today.
Yeah, that's true.
But and she went through her story, and it was quite an amazing story of all the things that they did and the opportunities they took advantage of, and like how they approached life and their philosophy of like money and living. And it was very insightful. I would say that she's a very wise woman. She's our first woman on the podcast, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
So she broke a glass ceiling. You know, we're helping the revolution.
Awesome.
Viva la feminism.
We're not going to let her vote. We're not going to let her vote, though.
Well, you know what else she did on top of that?
What?
She actually did run for office.
All right.
I think she did. She did. I don't think she was served as delegates on boards. She was
wow.
She helped at one point. She told me she helped take down Mitt Romney in some way.
Yeah. Okay, so, she can vote. That's.
she's a very, like, all the things she'd done while they were doing this. They took care of a foster care child that had a disability.
Wow.
And they've been doing all of these things. And it's like, and I just wanted people to hear her story to say like, oh, you can actually, a lot of this stuff is in your head. A lot of these barriers are
Yeah.
mindset barriers, not because people today are like, oh, the boomers had it so good. They bought a house when it was cheap. She and her husband bought a house when he was the only one working and he made 10, 15 an hour.
Woo!
They got a house and then they moved up from there and they've had no debt at all. Right. And it worked for them. And all of their family, all of 8 of them have passports. They go to they went on a week-long trip to France not long ago. Right. And so you don't have to live a horrible life and also be enslaved to the system. Right.
Yeah.
You can, there's other ways out of it. And she's also I'm not sure. Do they like being called Mormons or Latter-day Saints?
I don't know.
I know she used the term Latter-day. She's a Latter-day Saints person, which makes her also our first Mormon interviewee.
Yeah. They're good at thrift.
Yeah, I would like more Mormons to listen to the show because I need people in my life who have prepping as part of their religion.
Yeah.
That's what I like. And I don't think that I would like the Mormons to be more into. I think that they should be, but at least they do a good bit of preparation.
Yeah.
And hitherto my connection to the Mormons has been largely through the sumo wrestling world.
Yeah.
Amateur sumo, which for some reason had a lot of people from Utah in it. And they were very intense about the sumo wrestling. So she gave a nice counterbalance to my view of Mormons as primarily sumo wrestlers.
This sounds like a great interview. This
it
is
was
the
a great interview
I need to hear today. It's going to be awesome.
I enjoyed it a lot. It's going to make us all feel better after that dark moment.
Yeah.
Where we had to. I don't think we had a choice. I really agonized over it.
Yeah, I can tell you're broken up about it.
The jury did also. The jury. There was tears I heard in the jury room as they all said. I heard someone say, "But I don't want to convict him. He's my friend."
Yeah, yeah.
And another person goes, "But we have to, because he's your friend." You see, and then so because how could we let him live with that on his conscience?
Yeah,
So I hope you all enjoy the interview, except for Albert Einstein, who's now dead. He won't enjoy the interview, but the rest of you, I hope that you enjoy it. And it's coming up on Christmas time. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I can't play because my microphone is in the way. See this? The thing about a dulcimer, here's the problem, is it's very hard. It's sort of it's not. It sits in your lap, so you have to have a nice seat.
Are we still doing show? I thought I was gonna.
I'm just still talking. You can cut it off whenever.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I am here with Chelsea. She is I believe you're our first female guest on the show. So congratulations for that. You broke a glass ceiling.
Thank you.
That's nice. And I wanted to have you on because you were talking with a mutual person on the internet, and you talked about your family life. And I thought it was sort of remarkable what you described, which is that you have, correct me if any of this is wrong, you're a stay-at-home mother with 6 children, and your husband and you together have an income of less than $50,000 a year, but you still make it work. And not only make it work, seem to thrive in a way that most people making a lot higher income are not. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say. I think that it's important not to maybe fantasize my situation. Sure. There have been a lot of sacrifices made. There are some things we don't do and don't afford because of it. But we have never made more than $50,000 in a year.
Okay. So
So but you have, so you were talked about, I think what got a lot of traction was that you discussed the fact that you and your husband and your whole family really travel a lot, and you've been to several different countries with your children, and that you you don't seem to want for much, which is sort of, I know you said you make sacrifices, but the general view of a lot of people on the internet seems to be today that you need like $200,000 to have 2 children.
Yeah, we don't want for much. Since 2016, I've had 3 of my children, and I've also been to Europe 3 times.
Wow.
2 of the times I brought kids. One of them was just 5 kids because we only had 5 at the time, and one of the times was 1 child. We just brought the youngest because she was an infant. I've been to Canada with 3 of my kids, and I've been to Central America, a few countries there. And so on top of that, we've done road trips. Some of my kids have been to like 11 different baseball stadiums because I love baseball and I have a goal to go to all 30. Some of them have only been to 7, but we've done quite a few things. My kids have probably stayed at 100 hotels and I may have spoiled them in that, but we definitely have always been blessed to be able to afford the things that we have. And there's a combination of a lot of things that have contributed to that ability.
Yeah, and that's what I guess I'm wanting to get into your life philosophy, because at this show, we try to help people like see that they don't need to feel as trapped by the system, quote unquote, as they seem to feel. And that a lot of that is in their heads. And so what is you and your husband's philosophy that allows you to do these things, like take 5 kids to Europe 3 times on a single income of less than $50,000, and also Central America, and travel around, and like what is your, like, what, if you don't mind getting too personal or anything, like what's your living arrangements? Are you guys like, because a lot of people would assume that you're like living in a bus or something.
No. Okay. So, there's so many things. First of all, my husband and we got married really young. I was 18. He is just barely 22. So, we've known each other our whole lives. And, when we only dated for 7 months before we got married, but we at least knew each other a long time. And I think the fact that we got married so young really kind of helped, because we had talked about before we got married what we wanted. We both grew up in families that had a stay-at-home mom. We had a lot of acquaintances and friends growing up that there was a mix. They either had or they hadn't. And we just both noticed a trend that the ones that hadn't had a stay-at-home mom really struggled with a lot of different things. Sometimes it was drugs, and sometimes it was just attitude, rebellion. It just seemed like that was what we wanted. And so when we got married, we knew that was the plan. And about 4 months after we got married, I got pregnant with our first child. That was kind of a surprise. So we'd only been married 13 months when she was born, and my husband had pretty much no school. He had served a 2-year church mission before we got married. And so he had only gotten about a semester done of school before we were married. And so we were kind of put in this situation where, well, I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but it happened earlier than we expected. And so he was working full-time and going to school full-time. And I watched kids and did a lot of things, but I haven't always been a stay-at-home mom in the sense that I've had 3 out-of-the-home jobs in the last 12 years. All of them were temporary. So I don't consider them really, like, one of them really was just someone asking for a favor for me to fill in for somebody on weekends for 7 weeks while they train new people. Mm-hmm. And, or being like the holiday caregiver for a child that had needs. And so very, very, very part-time. But basically our philosophy has always just been that we need to make it work. And so we have. I think another philosophy that has helped us is that we we embrace possibilities. When we hear about an opportunity, no matter how crazy it sounds, we think about it. And
Okay, yeah. That's intriguing because you mentioned that. Like, what sort of opportunities are you talking about? Because like a lot of people hear about an opportunity, it sounds crazy. Like, it's a scam or that's wasted time.
all right, well, let me tell you some of the few things that we've done. First of all, like I said, my husband went to school full time and worked. We bought a house when I was 21, and I think he was making $10.50 an hour.
Wow. Okay.
But that was back in the early 2010s where the market had crashed, and I think the home we bought was $124,000. So we barely qualified, but we did it, and that's not a normal thing for most 21 and 24-year-olds.
It's not normal, but you are a counterexample to people being like, because there's such defeatism, like in just the culture and the narrative. Everyone's like, oh, the boomer generation had it easy; they could afford a house, but you guys did that recently, like on $10-15 an hour. What you said, bought a house.
Yes, and
it's not impossible. You can still do it. It's a mindset.
Yeah, and I did watch kids in the house, but I mean, we're talking a couple bucks an hour. It was not that. And just completely supplemental. So that's one of the crazy things that we did. When that situation was, I don't know, the whole time when you're working full time and going to school full time and having kids, it's a tough situation. And we were always kind of looking to better our situation. So one of the things that I looked into doing was I found a live-in position as a nanny to a family that the husband was in tech and the wife was a doctor. And so we took it. I think it paid $600 a month. It was not a lot at all.
Right. No. Yeah.
But it included all of our food, all of our utilities. And it was a very nice basement that we lived in. It was 3 bedrooms. It was very large. And we owned a house at the time. We thought we'll just rent our home out. We lived in a college town. So we thought it would be a good idea. We did that. And just so you don't think that everything we did was a good idea, we hated it.
Okay. Yeah.
We thought, my husband will go down in work hours and he can finish school faster. But the wife did not like me. And there were some issues, but we learned so much from that experience. One thing that we learned was that we didn't want to be like them. They worked a lot and money was really important to them. And I think before that, money was really important to us. But at that time, it was really kind of a paradigm shift to thinking like, well, we're not willing to sacrifice some things for money. There are some things that we want to be more important. And so we ended up leaving that situation and getting an apartment. And because we had sold our house while we were doing that, the renters didn't work out.
Yeah.
So we did. Another opportunity that sounded crazy was that we did a program through rural housing development where 10 families get together and they build their houses together under the direction of one contractor.
Oh, I've never heard of such a thing.
Yeah, it's not available everywhere. We did it in Utah. It's called the Self-Help Homes Program. And yeah, you build your houses and the point of it is that it helps lower income families and you only have to put down a certain amount. I think for us it was $500. But you build it. So you are building the house yourself.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. You frame it. There are some things you don't do. You don't do electrical. You don't do plumbing. You don't do drywall and you don't do the flooring, but you do the roofing, you do the windows.
Okay. So you put down the 500 and I guess the rest is on a mortgage, but it's a cheaper mortgage. Yeah.
They give you a better rate. And by the time that you own the house, you have equity in it. And so it's called sweat equity. Instead of paying $40,000 down on the house, you work your $40,000 worth, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we heard about that. And rather than just be like, oh, that's an interesting idea, when we hear about something like that, we look into it. And so I learned everything I could learn, but I hit a wall where I couldn't learn anymore. So I went ahead and applied, because what's the point of thinking about it if you don't know if you qualify?
Yeah, if you think and never take action, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. And so while I was applying, then it was like, well, where would we live while we did it? Well, who would babysit for us? We had 2 children at the time. And so we had a plan. And once you have a plan that's written down, or at least in your head, kind of been thought through, then all those possibilities that kind of seem out there really turn into opportunities. Because until you have like the requisite information, you really can't say, well, maybe we'll do that, because you don't actually know if you can.
Right.
So we did that, and we moved in with parents in a basement, and that was not the most fun experience, but super helpful. The other crazy thing we did was, while we waited for that program to begin, my husband was in his last semester of school, and he lost his job. So he no longer, he was gonna no longer qualify.
Right.
So we had to make the decision if we wanted to go ahead and sign it, knowing that his income was going to end, or and take on a mortgage, or whether or not we wanted to do something else. So again, the planning is what is most important, because we sat there and we ran through the numbers. He was going to have a paycheck for a certain amount of time, so it wasn't a problem with not qualifying for the mortgage, but we didn't know what he would be doing after he graduated. And so we went through and we saw, well, when we finish building the house, we'll have $40,000 in equity. $40,000 was way more than we had ever made in a year.
Sure.
So it was like, well, they're saying we'll probably be done in 10 months. That's less than a year. And we'll make more in equity. And if worst case scenario, we sell it right after we're done building, and that sucks for us, but we've made this money. Best case scenario, you get a different job and we actually can afford the mortgage.
Right. Yeah.
So we took a leap of faith and we did it. And it ended up being that because he lost his job while he's in his last semester, he took a subbing jobs for teaching, and he ended up having schools that really wanted him, and got a job at a school a mile from where we built our house.
Oh, so your husband was going to school to be a teacher at the time?
He wasn't.
Oh, he wasn't?
No.
Oh, what was he in school for?
He did English. Creative writing. So yeah, we have alternative views about the public school system.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm not. I don't mean this in a stereotypical way, but based on what you've told me so far, I could have guessed that.
Yeah. Well,
not that that's bad. I share those views, but when I hear someone like willing to do a thing where they put in $500 with 10 other families and build their own houses together, I'm like, that's a person that probably homeschools.
Well, the thing about compulsory education is that it's really difficult to travel.
Yes.
And we love to travel, and we like the freedom that comes with it. And so to be honest with you, I had been telling my husband I wanted him to be a teacher for years, because he has a talent with youth, and also because I liked the schedule.
The summer's off. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we've made some decisions that have really paid off. Another strange possibility that we ended up taking was his principal invited us to do a Boy Scout camp over the summer that he did every year. And so we did that, and we took our 3 kids with us, and I was 8 months pregnant, and we did that 2 years in a row. So the first year we went with 3 kids and I was pregnant. The second year we went with 4 kids and a foster daughter, which brings me to another crazy thing we did.
So you were foster parents as well?
Well, it wasn't foster care. Like, it wasn't the actual foster system. It's actually called professional parenting. And how that works is that there are children with special needs or adults with special needs who get disability. And there are companies that act as a go-between for the families who have these children, and for families or professional parents that those kids get to go and live with temporarily. Sometimes it's just Monday through Friday. Sometimes it's just a couple times a week. And sometimes it's 24/7 all of the time. Well, the plus side of that is that the families that have the children with disabilities, they have some respite time because it's hard to have kids that need 24-hour care.
Yeah.
And some of these people, their kids are adults, and they're in the empty nester age. And so they get a caregiver for their children. And then it's great for the families because they're families who have kids. And so they're kind of tied down anyways. They're not necessarily going clubbing every night or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So they really can take care of a person who has more needs, they really can. And they're getting income. So when you're a lower income family and you're getting income with that, the thing about that income is that it's not taxable. And so it really can be a huge blessing. And then for the person getting the care, they get to be in a family that has children. And some of those people love children so much. The girl that we took care of for 3 years, she loved to do tea parties with my 3-year-old. And eventually that 3-year-old was 6. And then she loved to have bedtime stories from my next 3-year-old.
Right.
And it was so great. And we grew up in a place that wasn't, we were raising our children in a place that wasn't necessarily that diversified. And it was great for them to see somebody who was different.
Right.
And like I said, it helped us have extra income, which was great.
So you had 4 kids, 1 income, less than what at this point, $30,000 a year at this point?
No, by that point it was less than 40.
Less than $40,000 a year, 4 kids, and you foster a special needs child.
Yeah. Now, sorry, when I say
that's sort of like being a saint.
Well, when I say
that's amazing.
When I say the income was less than 40, my husband's income was less than 40. We probably got probably about 12 to 14,000 for taking care of the foster daughter.
Okay, so you got the income, and so like 53,000 somewhere in there.
No, it was more like 46.
Okay, 46.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So still, that's still saintly, yes.
And that money that is paid for her was supposed to go towards her food, obviously, and then also her room.
Sure.
She had to have her own room, and there's a bunch of things. But so some of that is for taking care of her, and some of that's just paying for room and board.
Yeah.
But that's another crazy thing we did. And then another crazy thing we did was we lived in a place where the housing was going crazy. It was going up a lot. And we had a lot of equity. We had a plan to pay off our mortgage in 7 years. And we looked at that a lot. We knew that wasn't likely. So we also had a plan to pay it off in 10 years and 12 years and in 15 years.
Yeah.
So when our equity went up a lot, we really wanted to start considering moving somewhere else because we always wanted to be somewhere warmer and with land.
Where were you living at this point? What you said, Utah?
We're living in Utah. Yes.
Okay. Right. And so you moved to where?
We moved to Texas.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a big change in weather.
Yes. And we liked it, but.
Now, what part of Utah? Were you in like the desert part or the?
Utah County.
Okay. Because Utah, there's so much. The land in Utah is very different from the north to the south.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you were Utah County. Okay.
Yeah.
That's sort of like, let me think. That's sort of mountainy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We live in a valley, but right on the mountains.
Yeah. Very cold in the winter.
Yes. Very cold in the winter.
Okay.
And it also gets hot in the summer. So it's kind of.
And what part of Texas did you end up in?
Northeast Texas. We were about 2 hours east of Dallas.
Okay. So that's a big change.
Yes, it was. And it was a really good one for us. We were able to find a property there that was very reasonably priced, and we paid for it in cash.
Oh, wow.
And then we remodeled it because from the program that we did to build our house, we learned a lot of skills. And when we built our house, we also finished our basement ourselves. So we learned a few more skills that way, like electrical and things. So, so we were able to remodel our home in Texas and sell it for about a 300% profit. So that's nice. Yeah. I mean, it was really cheap.
Yeah.
but that's still something. So, and like I said before, I don't want people to fantasize my life and romanticize it. Like currently we're selling that house and we are buying a new house with a mortgage. So we're not going to own our house outright. But the point of it is that we were able to move from a place that was high to a place that was low, and then wait for the low place to go high so that we can move back to a place that's high. We're not moving to the same place, but it is a very high market where we're moving to. And I think one of the most important things about people who want to achieve the ability to have a stay-at-home mom is financial independence, obviously.
Right. And I want to talk to you because you're such an example of like that doesn't necessitate nearly as much as what people think if they're just willing to get creative. Like you have you remind me of sort of the pioneer spirit. Like you're doing things yourself, building your own house, you're making it work, you're out in the, it's and it's really it's not that people are having a bad time now, but so much of that is just in their heads. Like the past, people just didn't have all these mental blockages about what was necessary.
Well, I think that there's a couple things that contribute to that. It's one is that, we really kind of have created this rat race, this keeping up with the Joneses. We consume so much media visually that really isn't real, like all of our TV shows and things that kind of create unrealistic expectations. And the thing is that there's so many programs out there to help people with lower incomes. And to be honest with you, I'm a very small government person, but I'm also realistic. I'm not going to not use help that they're offering because I see the value of families in the society.
Well, yeah, I agree with you there because I'm also small government, but like if they're going to make you pay taxes, you should at least get something back for it.
Yeah. So that program that I mentioned,
like if you're forcing me to pay taxes, then I'm going to use your programs.
Yes, exactly. That program I was talking to you earlier about building your home, not everybody wants to build their own home and not everybody can. The thing is that the loan that we got still exists even if you don't build. It's a USDA rural housing loan. And you still only have to put $500 down. It may have changed now that inflation is so high, but it might be $1,000 or something. But private mortgage insurance is super low. And these things exist. They're out there. There's so many free resources. Facebook, you can usually go, if you live near a bigger city, doesn't even have to be big. There's usually a Facebook group called Buy Nothing San Francisco, Buy Nothing Salt Lake City. You can go on there and people are just posting stuff for free. And, I just, honestly, I just found out about that this month and I used it for the first time today to pick up some free AirPods.
Oh, nice.
So brand new in the box, never been opened. It was just from someone who participates in like a Reddit gift exchange thing. And that's what they got. And they already had a pair. So they were giving it away, and there's a whole group of people that kind of have this philosophy that materialism isn't great and we shouldn't all just be consumers. And so let's buy nothing. And again, with the homeschooling, a lot of people are like, well, my kids won't be socialized. It's too expensive. In Utah, Wyoming, Arizona, this area, and the West, there's a My Tech High, which will pay for a lot of your kids' materials. There are Facebook communities of homeschool groups that do free activities all the time. And there's so many resources. I wish that there was a kind of universal way that people could find out about them, but they're really not advertised super well. It's almost all word of mouth.
Well, yeah, people only advertise things that people are going to buy.
Yes.
You spend money. But yeah, so, I mean, and the thing, to your point, the idea that homeschool kids are not socialized, it's like, that's only if you don't want to socialize. There's so many opportunities.
Yeah, well,
unless you live in the middle, like if you live in the middle of the coldest part of Alaska, there's probably not much to do. But anywhere else, there's lots of groups.
Well, even if you lived in the middle of nowhere, Alaska, when I first started homeschooling, there was someone on Facebook that wanted to create a pen pals group all over the world, connecting kids by their birthdays. So they literally got parents to type their kid's birthday in, and found other people that they were pen pals with. My kids wrote people in Sweden and Australia. And so that's not the traditional way of socializing necessarily, but it was a great way to educate my children about geography and penmanship and
just writing letters is a lost art form.
Yes. So there really are a lot of resources. And then, you asked about my philosophies early on, and I do want to pinpoint two important ones.
Sure.
One, we are religious, and
I was going to ask about that, but yeah.
Yes, we are. We belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And no, they don't endorse me or anything that I say.
Sure.
But, they teach a lot of things, what may not necessarily aren't related to the gospel, but are good principles. And they encourage us to be debt-free. They encourage us to get educations. They encourage us to have a stay-at-home mom, and to be family-oriented, to serve other people, to give back to community. They really encourage all those things. And that's how we grew up. And that made a huge deal. One other thing that they do is we pay tithing. So 10% of our income goes immediately. It's the first bill. It's not a bill, but it's the first thing that I pay is my tithing. And there have been times where I haven't wanted to, because I thought, how am I going to pay for Christmas gifts, or how are we going to make ends meet this month or whatnot? And every time I just was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it. I believe in this. I'm going to do it. And every single time there is some way that every single time that I actually consciously have that little fight in my head and then make the choice to do it, we have been blessed financially with something totally random. One time I was expecting a check in January, and it was the first week of December. And I was like, should I pay this? Should I not? Like, I want that money for Christmas. And I went ahead and paid it. The check came the next day, and it was $100 more than I was expecting it to be.
Wow.
So it's just, and then that's happened, but also I have 6 kids and I have a husband with a blood disorder. We have never had to pay a medical bill that set us back.
Wow.
Ever. And my youngest was hospitalized earlier this year, and it's never been an issue for us. And I attribute that 100% to the law of tithing.
Like Jesus said, if you give, you will give back, good measure.
Yes.
You can just test him on that.
Yeah. And, he also said that he that loses his life shall find it. And, sometimes when you're really poor, your life is money. So
that's true.
If you're really wealthy, your life is money. So
now how would you compare your life to, because I've known some of these people too. And I know I just had a small anecdote about your family you nannied for, but I can see them in my head and like what sort of person that is. I bet they probably had one kid. They may have went on to have another one. That was it. And they still are somewhat miserable about money the whole time.
They had 3 kids.
Okay. That's more than most in that state, but yeah. Okay.
Well, the other thing that they were members of my faith as well. And the other thing that we promote is having children. So,
okay. Right.
No, I don't want to trash on them at all. They were good people. They did make their lives miserable about money.
I don't mean that they weren't, but it's just that people fall into this trap, like where they get stuck and like there's nothing is ever enough, and they're always that sort of upset about things and at each other's throat. It's like, but that isn't even really necessary, like as you're living proof of. Yeah,
well, if you live your life by I'll be happy when this happens, then you're never going to be happy, because there's always going to be the next this.
Right.
So,
do you ever feel, because I think a lot of people they're stuck in the rat race primarily out of like social shame or like feeling that they're not good enough or not high status enough. Do those thoughts ever like get at you, or have you just sort of learned to not care about such things?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first, let me say one thing. I have an iPhone 6. It is my first smartphone. It is 6 years old. So, that's one of those things that we do differently. But no, I really struggled when we had been married about a year and a half, No, sorry, 2.5 years. We had one kid and one on the way. Someone from our church came and gave us a $100 gift card to Walmart for Christmas. And it was someone who gave it for somebody else anonymously. I was really embarrassed.
Oh, yeah. I see. Yeah.
I was really like, wait, and to be honest with you, I didn't really feel poor at that moment. I felt a little strained, but I didn't feel like we were super poor. But
right, but then you had this sudden like, oh, other people think we're like almost homeless.
Yes, and I hated when anybody offered charity. I really kind of did, but at some point I realized, because one of my love languages is giving. I love to give, and we have had an opportunity to help people several times, financially even. And I love that. And I had to realize at one point that when I'm allowing somebody to help me like that, I'm helping them too. My father and my father-in-law are both the kind of guys that if you go out to eat with them, there's no way you're paying, like they're going to pay for your whole family and there's nothing you can do about it. They won't let you pay for anything. And when I realized that that's just the way that they showed their love, it became easier to be a freeloader. Or
well, it's good for other people's souls too to do charity.
It is.
And so if you are on the receiving end of the charity, you're helping someone's soul, like in a real way.
Exactly. I've never ever. I mean, I do think that is important to have other people be able to help you. And now anytime anyone offers help, I'm just grateful, and I'm also happy that I get to be a part of their growth. Because to be honest with you, the older I get, the more it seems like life is just about trading resources with each other at the right times.
Interesting.
The older people are here to help us young mothers get through the hard times, and then when we get older, we help the young mothers get through the hard times. And that brings me to another philosophy that I held when I had one child and a stay-at-home mom. I didn't like it. Right. I was very ambitious. I wanted to finish my education because I stopped doing it, and I had worked full time and I like money. So I didn't love it. I was at home in the winter. I don't like the cold, with a baby that didn't really speak to me. And I really struggled. And so one thing that I did was I got on Craigslist and I wrote a post saying, I can't go to school right now because it's just not in the cards for me. And I know that there's lots of moms here who are trying to go to school and childcare is expensive. So why don't you email me how many kids you have, what hours you have, and what you can pay? And I will either agree to it or it won't.
Right. Okay.
So I watched some kids for $2.50 an hour. I watched some kids for $2 an hour. I watched some kids for $1 an hour. And I just kind of did that. And I felt like at the time, it was super hard and really cheap, obviously. But I felt like at the time that it was me helping other people accomplish something I wanted to accomplish, but couldn't.
Oh, yeah. See, that's beautiful. That's I think that is how you're supposed to channel that energy. Like, if you can't do the thing right now, but you can help other people, then it sort of fulfills that urge in you as well, in a way.
Yes, it does. And it keeps you satisfied because there are times in your life where you just have to get through a time period, and it kind of keeps you satisfied through those time periods. And the thing is, I watched them in my home. So I got to stay home with my child, she got to go, and she had friends and she liked it a lot, but it was helpful. And sometimes I had to say, yeah, never mind, this isn't working out. But it really helped us it helped us to not feel like we were as financially tight as we were. Like I said, at the time, we didn't even really feel like we were that poor.
And also you're helping other people. So like you're giving back the charity that was given to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and then the other second philosophy I wanted to go over is being debt-free. Now, that's not always possible. When I was 21, we subscribed to Dave Ramsey philosophy. Love Dave Ramsey. He's awesome. Highly recommend.
He's a flat earther now. A lot of people don't know that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he has. He said he made a couple of comments. And I was like, oh, see, yeah, they got to him. But continue.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I won't knock it because I don't actually know. So
That's right. That's what I said. I've never been up high.
exactly.
I've been in an airplane. That's as high as I've been, and it looked flat from there.
Yeah, so we subscribed to him. We got debt free. We haven't had any debt since 2011.
Wow.
So we had a car payment at that time. Thankfully, it was a Toyota, and that was right when Toyotas were super hard to get because the factory shut down in Japan or something. And so we were able to actually trade it in for, well, I guess we sold it. Because we didn't get another car from them, but we took it to a dealer and they paid us $3,000 more than we owed on it.
Wow.
I know that that's not something that can happen for everybody.
Sure.
But we bought a 2015-year-old sedan with the chipped paint on the hood. It was purple. It was very ugly. And we just, we've just gone upgraded slowly in cash. We believe heavily in that, just not to get debt. Sorry, when I said debt free, the one house that we built, that we had a mortgage on that, so that wasn't correct. I was
going to ask about that. Yeah. But other than that mortgage.
Yes, other than a mortgage, we haven't had any since then.
Do you use a credit card at all at any time, or?
We didn't. After we got rid of our mortgage and no longer had a line of credit, then when we started looking to buy again with a mortgage, we did get one. So we have one now. We just have to have an open line in order to have credit, so I know there are other ways to do it, but I don't know about them well enough to do it. Does that make sense?
Debt is I think usury should be illegal and like punishable by death, maybe. It's
for certain, the credit score system is very messed up. Any company that you can't call or email, that you have to write a letter to get in touch with, that's just something's not right there.
Yeah, it's the debt thing is what kills people. It like sucks the life out of them.
Yeah,
that's so smart not to do that as much.
It really does. And the other, so we love Dave Ramsey. We don't follow him 100% on everything. But I think that he's a great tool for getting out of debt and for getting some basic knowledge about financial stuff. The other philosophy I want to talk about is FIRE movement. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Are you?
No, FIRE movement?
Yeah. So
FIRE. I'm not familiar with that at all. I'm interested though.
So FIRE stands for financially independent.
Retire early.
Retire early. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I have heard of that.
So basically what they do is they want to get a lump sum invested in the stock market, and they use credit cards to try to get all the points, and they really work the system, which I think is cool too. I also don't subscribe to them 100% because that's just not the lifestyle I want. They're very much like hustle in your first few years and then retire early. And with me raising a family, looking at a plan for that, I was like, well, I don't really feel like hustling until my oldest is 21 or whatever.
Sure.
I'd rather be present for her childhood and whatnot. So we don't really subscribe to that one fully, but it is very motivating. And I do recommend people look into it because, a lot of them move to countries that have cheaper tax codes, and they do have a lot of things that are like life hacks. And a lot of people say they want to travel. I don't know if they actually do, but if you want to travel, definitely look up people in the FIRE movement because there's tons of ways to live abroad that just work.
Yeah.
And so
people are doing all sorts of interesting things outside the mainstream that are surprising and creative, but work.
They are. Yeah. So financially, you need to get in a place where you can survive. And I think that one of the biggest ways to do that is to stop living paycheck to paycheck. And most people just don't know how to do that.
Right.
So let me talk about one more weird thing we did, which is kind of funny. This is weird, but I'm going to do it. When we got our first tax return after having a child, it was the first time that we got a tax return, before we paid taxes. You get child tax credits. So we got a tax return. It wasn't that much, but it was a few thousand. And that's what we saved it and added to it to do our down payment on our first house.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot, when you were asking me if I ever feel like, I'm not keeping up with other people in the right brands or, whatever,
Right.
that was one thing we noticed, is that when we would get a tax return, we usually replenished our savings accounts. Like we have emergency savings. We would replenish that, or we would spend it on something like that, where a lot of people were buying new furniture. I never bought a new piece of furniture, for like a brand new piece of furniture for my house that wasn't a mattress, until after we were married for 6 years.
Okay, so you were using a lot of secondhand stuff, hand-me-down stuff.
Sorry, it wasn't 6 years. I can't do math right now.
Okay.
It was 9 years.
Okay.
So yeah, and that was one piece of furniture. We were using, we got a lot of stuff from yard sales. Moving sales are the best, especially if they're in wealthy neighborhoods, because you can get some high quality furniture for really cheap.
You can't. Not yesterday, but a little bit ago, I found like a antique. It was a wood carved advertisement for a bullfight in Mexico from like 1922, and I think that thing is worth probably $2,000. I got it for like $20.
Yeah.
Because it's like this amazing antique or something,
Yeah,
but,
you really can.
You can find amazing stuff at yard sales.
You can find a lot. One family was moving to South Africa when back in 2010, and they were wealthy, and they wanted to get rid of their sectional. We got it for $450, which was so much for us at that time. But we just got rid of that thing last year, and it was in great condition. So
yeah.
It was this year. It was earlier this year.
Do you do a lot of repairing? Like, are you a mom that like patches clothes?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm the type of mom that if my child has an accident in their underwear, I might just throw it away.
Okay. I didn't know how pioneer you'd gotten.
No, I don't do that.
Okay.
I would love to have those skills, but I don't. And and I'm also the kind of person that I had a sewing machine for years and didn't use it. And so I just decided that maybe I should get rid of it.
Right.
Because I'm busy. I have a lot of kids.
Yeah, I bet so.
So that's just kind of how it goes. As far as other things like that, like we have had animals before. I love chickens. They're so nice. I
was going to ask about your food situation, because the grocery bill is a huge bill for a lot of families.
Okay. So
like, do you do any of that stuff? You grow food or anything like that?
Not right now. I've always loved gardening. I've never been very good at it. Unfortunately, it's something I'm still learning to do. I have planted a lot, but since we've moved a lot, it hasn't really, as far as like fruit trees and berries, I haven't been able to enjoy those things as much. Like last year we planted cabbages, tomatoes, and peppers, and that's it.
Sure.
But often I will find farms or orchards that have stuff, and I'll buy in bulk. And so, you know how kids, like, they'll eat 3 bites of an apple and then they'll stick it on the table. Oh my goodness, that drives me nuts. So now what I do is when they do that, I just I stick it in the blender. And then, when I get enough in there, because it fills up every day.
Right.
I blend it up and then I pour it into my dehydrator and I make fruit leather.
Oh, okay.
And I don't take the seeds out or anything. I just blend it all together. So, I do stuff like that. I ferment vegetables. I make my own bread. I don't really do more than that because I would like to, but it's just slow going. I've canned before, but, there's often, like in rural Texas, you can find people that have extra produce and they just trade with each other, and they'll just give stuff away for free too, especially in the South, because there's so many churches there and they do so many awesome programs. And so, a lot of times, like once a month, they'll get a bunch of produce at one church and you just come and you get what you want. And
really, I've never seen this. That sounds interesting.
So you can get, I think I got like a 50-pound bag of carrots once and an entire like Santa Claus sized sack of cabbages, and I made tons of sauerkraut. And, so but I'll go to like a farm and a lot of them are like U-Picks, or they'll have like a box of apples for like $20 or something. It's not super cheap, but it's not super expensive. And then we shop at Costco a lot. And when you buy it in bulk, it really does kind of become cheap. Most of what we buy is meat and produce. We don't buy a lot of cereal or macaroni and cheese or anything processed. We don't eat super clean. I'm not trying to make that a thing.
Yeah.
But we do tend to buy like that. The other thing is that we have food storage. So whenever some of our tax returns we spent on that. And that helps a lot too, because if there ever is a time where the grocery budget runs out, you just kind of, rely on what you have. I usually have about at least a month and a half supply of what we actually use in my house.
Now, isn't that, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't the food storage thing a Latter-day Saints thing that a lot of them do?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
We've been encouraging our church.
I love that, by the way.
Yeah, no,
I also have a food storage.
Yeah, it's a great idea. We have different levels of food storage. So we have food storage that like I bought the last 25 years and I don't want to look at it or think about it for another 23 years.
Uh-huh.
And then I have food storage that I consider more of like my pantry storage.
Right.
So, I buy 12 cans of green beans every month, whether or not we ran out of our green beans.
Okay.
I kind of have like a specific amount of pantry food that's not non-perishable that I buy every month, no matter what.
Okay.
And then, like I said, if the budget runs out one month because we decided to go out to eat or whatever, I guess we eat more green beans that month or something.
Okay.
So the food has really never been a problem. It's kind of interesting. I could just tell you, we spend about $700 a month right now on groceries. It's not a lot. And I do buy raw milk that's like $9 a gallon. So I have things that I buy that are kind of expensive. But
let's see, there's you have 6 children and 2 adults. So $700 a month on groceries for 8 people is really good.
Yes.
Right.
And we do have a separate restaurants budget.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Which we sometimes often blow.
Okay.
So that's the one area we're not quite as disciplined in.
Right.
But it's not bad. We have spent a lot more than that. But when I'm talking about the stuff that we actually need to buy in a month, 700 stretches just fine. We often will buy a lot of extra stuff because we're still trying to build our food storage and things like that. Some months are more expensive, like around holidays or birthdays. And so I don't know, it just always seems to work out. And I kind of attribute it to the law of tithing thing.
Sure.
Coincidence or whatever. But the other thing is, like, even in Utah, when we lived there are some neighborhoods that have like a stand where people put their extra produce, and it's just kind of like grab and take. Like, you can put stuff there because if you grew like 500 zucchinis, don't necessarily want that. Someone else over here has 6 grapevines and they don't necessarily want that. So everyone kind of brings their produce to one of those stands, and then you just take what you need. So it's kind of cool. And those kind of things do exist other places. I don't know how you find out about them though, other than, like you said, like only things that cost money really get advertised. So
yeah, you have to sort of just start. I think you just start living in that way, and then the opportunities just sort of show up. Yeah,
finding like-minded people is a big deal. I got the 50-pound bag of carrots from somebody who was teaching me how to can.
Okay.
And, the thing is, I learned how to can for free. I didn't have to take a class or anything because I saw that she did it, and I went up there and said, "That is awesome, and I want to learn from you. Can I help you can your food?" She didn't really need my help, so she just decided to teach me instead. And I learned a lot of things from her, and that is very valuable, and that's free education right there.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like you have it's a nice mix, a balance of do it yourself and also relying on the community.
Yeah, you need to somewhat, be involved. Right. But I think it's really just this kind of idea of realizing that like life is hard.
Yeah.
You do want to learn from other people. I'm a millennial. My generation has its pros and its cons.
Uh-huh.
We tend to not respect our elders very much. And there's so many things that they know that is going to die off real soon. And that it just breaks my heart. I wish that our society in general respected the elderly a little bit better. I personally love elderly people. And I love to learn from them. And so I do, and that's another thing I wanted to bring up. Because I'm a stay-at-home mom, I don't really want people to think that I just stay home and only associate with my children. I really don't.
Well, that's a big stigma people put on stay-at-home moms. Is like, you don't do anything, whatever. That's never true.
Yeah, no. Since 2009, when I got married and I had a child in 2010, I've been able to be a delegate for my political party. Well, my previous political party.
Right.
I've been able to meet with state senators, U.S. congressmen, governors. I've been able to discuss legislation. I was able to piss off Mitt Romney one time. That was
well, very good. Very good.
And I have been on a school board for my children. My children have not always been homeschooled. I've been able to be on a board that hires and fires people for schools. And, I've done a lot of things. I've traveled a lot. And I just don't want people to think that just because you're a stay-at-home mom, you have to give up your ambitions.
That's all you are.
Yeah, I used to be really political. I'm really not anymore, and I gave that up because it was such a waste of time. And
yeah, I've been on a similar journey. Yeah,
I just realized that I have some really great ideas, but no one would vote for me, and that's fine.
Right.
Not that I even wanted to run, but I just realized that I don't need that in my life. So I don't want people to think that they can't learn anything because they're stay-at-home mom. I know how to do electrical. I can do it. I learned how to from a contractor who taught me how to do it, and I've done it. When we built our house, my husband didn't know how to do any of that.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do any of that. And now I can. And when we bought a home, we didn't know what we were doing. We looked at a lot of homes. We've learned a lot about mortgages, and now, we've bought homes without realtors before because we know enough to do that. So you can keep learning and you can keep going. And I did quit school to be a stay-at-home mom. I'm going to school now.
Okay. What are you going to school for?
Well, right now I'm studying digital marketing.
Okay.
Social media marketing, which is just something that I have a good eye for marketing. It's not something I'm passionate about or anything like that, but I felt compelled to go to school. I didn't know what to study, but I knew that if it was going to be something to help in a potential career, I wanted it to be something I could do from home because that's my mindset. And digital marketing is a great place for that. And like I said, there are so many programs for that. I want to put a quick plug into the one I'm doing real quick, which is called the BYU Pathway Program. It's through BYU. And if you do their 1-year program, you can get super cheap tuition on a ton of different degrees that are all very career oriented.
Oh, okay.
I think it's $75 a credit. I mean, it's very cheap. Yes. And you can do it 100% online. And no, you do not have to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to do it. And yeah,
it's accredited.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
The first year is not technically degree seeking. So if you want to use FAFSA for it, that's not going to work. But you're only taking about 13 credits in the first year. After that, you can take as much as you want. It is degree seeking, and FAFSA will work for it. So, like I said, there's just so many different ways to do this. For anybody that wants to do it, and especially if you're in debt, I don't want people to sit here and think like, well, that doesn't apply to me because of my situation, because I didn't do it early enough.
Mhm.
That's like, you can start now. The living paycheck to paycheck like has to be overcome. And this is the best way to do it. I'm going to say it right now. If you get a tax return, when you get a tax return, take 1 month income from it, if you can, and put that into a savings account. Okay, I need to explain this better.
Sure, yeah, go ahead. Take your time.
Sorry. So if you get a check twice a month, let's say you get paid on the 1st and 16th.
Okay.
How a lot of people live is the check they get on the 1st, they'll pay rent and utilities and all these things. And the check they get on the 15th, they'll pay, for other bills that are due on the 16th or whatnot. And that is just such a stressful way to live. And when you're stressed out like that, you're going to have more medical problems. You're going to do more woe is me shopping. Feel bad for yourself and everything's a pity party. It's just not a healthy way to live. So what me and my husband did when we realized that we needed to get out of that hole is we got a tax return and we saved the amount of 1 month's budget of 1 month's income. And then, so we got it in March, we'll say for this example. And then, so for April, instead of when we got that check on April 1st, instead of spending it, we took all of our tax return budget that we saved and we spent that on April.
Okay.
And then our check from April 1st and April 15th went straight into a savings account. And we did not touch that or look at it until May 1st. So you are 1 month ahead in your budget. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're basically, you got a month saved and then you don't look at it till the next month. And then you use that month for the next month, sort of whatever.
Yeah. So on the 1st of every month, you pull out on May 1st, you pull out both April checks and you spend that on May. And then on June 1st, you pull out both May checks. Now, not everyone can do that. If you can only get one paycheck ahead, then do that. But get ahead, because there is no feeling better than the relief that comes from knowing that you're good this month.
Right. And then I presume have you done that multiple months? Like in the next year, you do another month and now you're 2 months ahead?
No,
you just stay one. Okay.
Yeah, we do the 1 month ahead, but we also have an emergency fund that is 3 to 6 months of expenses.
Okay.
During inflationary periods, we might invest that in the stock market, like right now, let's say.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you do that where you're just 1 month ahead. And that way you have the peace of mind. You're not as worried. And you actually know how much money you have to spend for the entire month. Whereas when you're doing it the other way, sometimes you had to miss work for a couple of days and then you're short a couple hundred that you were expecting or whatnot.
Right.
And that just ruins your budget. So I have a budget on Excel that I just copy every single month. Our income for most of the last few years has been the same amount every month. My husband's a teacher, so he gets the same amount. But just this last few months, I've had to kind of look at that again because we kind of, when we moved from Texas, we took a leap of faith into a new career and he was going to have to be part-time until they decided whether or not they actually liked him.
Right.
So I understand that, these ideals don't always work how they can. But when I think about how stressed out we were when we were living paycheck to paycheck and how much easier it's been since we've gotten out of that hole, like that's really what has made the big difference in being able to travel, because you're able to save. We save 10% of our income into savings. We save 15% into retirement. We pay 10% in tithing. We also do something called fast offerings for our church, which goes directly to people in our congregation that need help. And so right off the bat, let's see, what is that? 15, 25, 36% of our income is just gone. And then there's tax, of course, and the other stuff. But when you learn to live on only 36, on less, getting rid of potentially 46% of your income with taxes, it's really not that difficult to live within your means.
Mm-hmm.
Because crap hits the fan and you can't pay savings this month.
Right.
Well, you're 10% richer. So
yeah,
that's just kind of how it goes. I don't know. That's basically it. With the travel, the one thing I want to say about that is we wanted to do it. So we made a budget, we saved up for it. And once we had that money, we looked for deals. So the first time I went on a plane internationally was to France. And I got round trip tickets for $389.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
And the reason why I could buy it that cheap is because I had the money there already.
Yeah.
I had already mentally spent it on my vacation.
Okay,
so
yeah.
When we found the tickets, it was for spring break, and we were amazed at the price. So we called my parents and my siblings, and we were so excited that we eventually called my husband's parents and his siblings, and we ended up getting 14 people to come with us.
Wow.
So we had 14 adults on this trip. And you know what happens when you have 14 adults is that you can split lodging.
Yeah.
We found an amazing apartment that slept 15 people. It was right next to Notre Dame. And we stayed there for 7 nights for $350. Because by the time we split it 15 ways, that's how it worked out.
So you basically went to France minus food and stuff and like souvenirs or whatever for like $700-ish.
Yeah, we ended up spending less than $1,800, and we bought, that's including our passports and our insurance. Oh, that's the other thing. Get a passport. If you want to travel, get a passport now.
Yeah, don't wait till you want to do it because it's a process.
Yes, and you're going to find, well, that's not exactly it. It's the financial. You're going to find
that's true.
Great. And you're going to say, I want to go there and do that. And then you're going to be like, oh, wait, I have to pay $130 for my passport too. I can't do that anymore.
Right.
All my kids have passports. Some of my kids have had passports that they've never used because in that 5-year, well, actually, no, they all used them, but they only used them once in the 5-year period that before they expire. But the thing is we got passports in 2013 for our entire family. We didn't need them until 2016 and 2017.
Right.
So we were preparing ahead of time for that. But we spent them at a time where we had the money to spend. And so we spent it that way. So having goals cannot be underestimated. You have to have those goals. And, I'm on Twitter. My @ is Tua Chelsea. That's TUACHELSEA. And my DMs are open. If there is anybody that wants help with their specific situation and how to get out of paycheck to paycheck, how to find good travel deals, how to do any of these things, every person is different. And this is so much easier to figure out on an individual level. And I'm happy to help right now because I'm passionate about families. I'm passionate about travel. I'm passionate about financial freedom. And I think that we are here to help one another. And so I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Well, very good. Thank you. It was a great discussion. Very fascinating. I loved it. Thank you for doing it. And I think our listeners will really get something out of it.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, anyway, everybody, this has been an interview with Chelsea, the LDS modern pioneering woman. Thank you again.
have any targets up here? We just had something go right over the top of us that, I hate to say this, looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast and went right over the top of us.